However, Trevor Lawrence ended up getting the bag yesterday. 5 years, $274 million, $200 million guaranteed. It's going to make $55 million per year. A $142 million signing bonus. So automatically, we think Trevor Lawrence, and we saw Trevor Lawrence up close and personal last year at Shasky down in Jacksonville, and he faded down the stretch. Now, Christian Kirk did get hurt. Calvin Ridley and Trevor Lawrence didn't have that rapport that we all thought they would have. Evan Ingram had a solid season, but Trevor Lawrence, they didn't make the playoffs last year. And C.J. Stroud outplayed him in that division. But yet, he received $142 million at signing, a $37.5 million signing bonus, and the deal starts in 2026. So he'll be under contract through 2030. And then we get to Brock Purdy. And look, I'm not trying to come off as a Brock Purdy hater. I'm really not. I think he had a really, 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 really good season, Shasky. But I'm not going to lie. Those type of numbers scare me. Scare me. And then we'll get to Chris Sims, who had some very strong opinions about Brock Purdy's game against the Green Bay Packers. I'm sure everybody's going to call him a hater. But we got a lot to talk about now because Trevor Lawrence, if that's reset the quarterback market, what the hell is Brock Purdy going to get?
You know, it's interesting. You have been not warning me, but like basically saying that, you know, it's unfair to Caleb Williams to compare him to Patrick Mahomes, which I think is a totally fair point. And I do believe that when we make these comps, people aren't saying that that's exactly who they're going to be like.
Right.
They're just saying, hey, maybe the mannerisms or certain things that they do remind you of them.
And I think Caleb's going to be really good. I do believe he's going to be good. He said he's in a perfect situation.
But I see where you're coming from because I would observe the rhetoric around Trevor Lawrence coming out of college, and I heard people who I really respect, friends, people who break down film, etc. He's the best prospect since Elway. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. I don't think he's better than Andrew Luck. I just don't. And I saw more professional throws and things that you have to do from the pocket, third, fourth reads, and intermediate throws into coverage with Andrew Luck than I ever saw from Trevor Lawrence. Not saying that Trevor Lawrence isn't good. I'm not saying that Trevor Lawrence isn't talented. I just didn't love the offense that he was in, and I didn't see a lot of high-level professional throws that have to be thrown in the NFL. That being said, I really like Trevor. Like everything I've read from him, everything I've heard from him, seen from him, I think he inherited a very crummy situation. And so I think it's really easy to Google his stats and look at what he's done in the league and the Jaguars over the last couple of years and tell us he's not as good as, let's just use an example, Tua or Brock Purdy or a Dak Prescott, whomever you want to compare him to. Stats are stats. But I think given his situation, that organization, who was coaching him, I think we can kind of say, you know, some of those numbers aren't fair. Similar to Alex Smith, right? Similar. I like Trevor. I think he's a good quarterback. There's no way in hell I'm prepared to pay him what they paid him.
Yeah.
And I really like him. And I understand the argument of, well, you got to pay him because you took him number one overall. I understand all that. I'm just telling you, I would be very hesitant to give him that money.
And that situation in Jacksonville, to your point, when the hell are they ever going to get a quarterback? When are you going to be able to sign a free agent quarterback? And look, I've been fortunate to watch Trevor Lawrence twice in person. Lucky enough, the national championship was here at Levi Stadium in Gate, Alabama. And I remember I'll show you the picture at the break. When he ran on the field, I was like, damn, he's got size.
Oh, he's huge.
Wow, he's huge, right? And he was solid in that game. But my big takeaway in that football game was Clemson's defensive line, how bad Tua looked in that national championship game against Clemson, and how good Travis Etienne looked running the ball against Alabama. Justin Ross was special. Trevor was fine. He was fine as a freshman. But, you know, couple throws you're like, all right. So then I go see him against Ohio State in the Fiesta Bowl against Justin Fields. And there's Chase Young, and there's J.K. Dobbins, there's Garrett Wilson, there's Chris Olave, there's stars on top of stars, T. Higgins. I mean, it was unbelievable. And the biggest takeaway from Trevor in that game was, wow, I didn't know he could use his legs like that.
I agree with you.
I didn't know he had that in his game. As far as throws, there's a couple that you're like, oh, okay. But nothing that just literally blew me away. But he was no doubt, in my opinion, the number one pick. You got to take him number one overall.
Hands down.
I have no problem with that.
Hands down.
But his career hasn't progressed to the way I thought it would early on. And look, he had to come back win against the Chargers in the second season.
Was probably one of the better Jaguar moments in playoff history.
But I think you and I were both in the same boat in terms of fantasy football.
Yes.
And I'm not trying to say fantasy football is, but we both invested heavily in Trevor Lawrence.
I watched him all year.
So I watched I had him in like 3 leagues, 3 of my 4 leagues. And with all those weapons in Jacksonville, that offense was stagnant. Now, I don't know if it's on Doug Peterson. I don't know if it's on Trevor. I don't know if it's on injuries. I don't know if it's on bad offensive line play. But I didn't see that jump, that third-year leap for Trevor Lawrence. But, again, Jacksonville, they have to do something. What are you going to do? And that's a lot of cash for Trevor Lawrence.
Oh my God.
A lot of cash.
I look at the NFL and I understand the market for quarterbacks like wide receiver is just it's astronomical. It really is. And I look at Trevor and I find him to be a very interesting case study when we contrast him and Brock. And the reason why is one is the number 1 overall pick, one is Mr. Irrelevant. One is a strapping 6'6", prototype. The other one is 6 feet or 6'1", depending on, what you're going off. One is went to a complete dumpster fire and had one of the worst coaches we've ever seen in Urban Meyer at the NFL. It was a nightmare, like straight up. The other one inherited Kyle Shanahan and the greatest, one of the greatest rosters in the NFL, right? These are complete case studies for the opposite POME, product of their environment. And I just wonder, when I see that kind of deal for Jacksonville, I get why they did it. I'm not even bashing them. I think if push came to shove, I'd probably do it, but I'd be reluctant. I'm very reluctant.
That's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. If I asked the Jacksonville Jaguars, would you give Brock Purdy that same amount of money? I think almost all of them is saying no.
I mean, we've talked to a lot of people around this country. Big fan in Seattle, KJR. Last year, before the Thanksgiving Day game, Thanksgiving night, I believe Geno Smith could do what Brock Purdy did in that offense. That's Dick Fan in Seattle. We disagree. We laughed at him. We go to Philadelphia. Spike Eskin, 94 WIP, Sports Radio, Philadelphia. Came on a couple months ago. I believe Daniel Jones could do what Brock Purdy's doing in that offense. That's Philadelphia. We've heard many more people from all over the country. Yeah, Brock's a nice story, but what do you do if you take away Shanahan? What is he if he takes away Shanahan? Now, again, 408, I see you on Xfinity Mobile Text like Christian Kirk did get hurt on Monday Night Football, and it did derail the offense. I think we underrated Christian Kirk and his rapport with Trevor Lawrence. But Jacksonville right now, if they're happy because they have Trevor Lawrence and they believe he's going to get better and better over Doug Peterson. But a lot of people see Brock Purdy and say, well, there's a lot of wide open wide receivers. Well, to your point, Chasky, there's a big-time roster. And forget the draft pick and the draft status. Brock Purdy hasn't missed a lot of football games, but he's been nicked up a lot. And then you got the situation where you have to pay Ayuk. You may have to extend Trent Williams. You got to have Hufanga. We've talked about it. Drake Greenlaw, Diablo Lenore, Travis Ward. What happens if you do give Brock all that money? What does his roster look like, and what does he look like? See, I'm afraid to find out.
Well,
I'm afraid to find out.
I've already been thinking about this long and hard. And, we've had a lot of talking about pocket watching. Brandon Ayuk in particular.
Right.
Is he worth 30, 29, 28, 27, 26, 25, et cetera? I'm going to be straight up, Niner fans. Here's the number for me. The second Brock makes more than 20% of whatever the cap is in that year, guaranteed at sign, like what for that year, and to me, the number is somewhere between 45 and 50 million. Anything more than that, I'm out.
Yeah.
I'm telling you right now, if he wants anything more than that, I'm out. You cannot be soaking up more than 20% of the cap. And the reason why I use that number is because we can all see that when it comes to winning in the playoffs, every $1 million across your team of the 22 starters matters.
No doubt.
Every $1 million to a special team player matters. These margins are so thin. And I like Brock a lot. I understand the market. I'm looking at someone like Kirk Cousins, and I'm saying to myself, way bigger resume. I think Brock has had higher highs. I also think that Kirk Cousins done it for a significantly longer period of time. Most people laugh at the Kirk Cousins contract. Well, most people are going to laugh at a Brock Purdy contract outside of this market.
Well,
and that's the part that Niner fans need to you better be ready for.
There's two things that I thought about over and over last night, and we're going to play the Chris Sims sound, 888-957-9570. I do want to hear from fans on this. This is a major, major situation that's looming with the San Francisco 49ers. Forget Ayuk. This is the quarterback of the San Francisco 49ers. The two things I thought about over and over and over last night, Shasky.
What's that?
I thought about our walk out of the Super Bowl, and the first thing you told me after Allegiant Stadium, the difference in this game was the quarterbacks. One was great, one was good, but not good enough. Not good enough.
But I want to make sure it's clear.
Yeah, that's not. You didn't say he had a bad game, but you just said that's the difference between greatness. And you know what? I got that experience against the New York Yankees at Oracle Park when I saw Aaron Judge. I was like, that's greatness. That's greatness. That's kind of what you need at the highest of highest levels.
To
right?
win it all.
So I kept thinking about that over and over and over again. Then I thought about the Green Bay game, what I saw on Christmas Day with Brock Purdy. And then I thought about what you said a few weeks ago. It is so true with pro sports. You can make little mistakes here and there, but you can't make $200 million mistakes. Now, Jimmy Garoppolo, I would say his contract, right, where he got paid, and Shanahan mentioned it. They made him the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. He, quote unquote, reset the quarterback market.
5 games.
5 games. Reset the quarterback market after 5 games.
It's crazy,
right?
really.
$137 million, whatever it was, big time signing bonus over $70 million. You guys know the numbers. And I would say Jimmy Garoppolo was a good 49er.
I think
he was worth the second round pick, but boy, they had the opt-outs in that deal.
Yeah.
And the minute he signed that deal, we were hypercritical of Jimmy on every single throw. He threw the Texans right to Jeff Wilson Jr. to come back from a 16-0 deficit, threw for over 400 yards, and the rhetoric was, well, the ball placement was a little off. Jeff Wilson Jr. had to contort his body, turn around and make a great catch to save Jimmy Garoppolo. Like, we emphasize and hyper-focus on every single throw with Jimmy Garoppolo. What's going to happen if Purdy sees a deal like Trevor Lawrence? I'm afraid, man. These are massive, massive moves. And is Shanahan going to be willing to just say, you know what? Here you go, Brock. Here's 20% of the cap. And we believe, because when you give a player that type of money, Jacksonville is basically saying, Trevor Lawrence, you can elevate the rest of the team.
Yes.
I don't know if you can do that.
Yeah.
Brock Purdy, when I give you this money, you're going to elevate the rest of the team. Well, we know Mahomes could do that. Josh Allen at times could do that.
Well, that's why they traded away Diggs.
Yep.
They drafted a young wide receiver, and what's their belief in Buffalo? Josh Allen will figure it out with this Florida State Keon Coleman wide receiver, right? To your point, though, B, I think this is an important distinction. The Jimmy Garoppolo deal happened when their finances weren't as bloated across the board as where they are now. I think that is a distinction. Back when Jimmy signed the deal, let's think about where they were. It was 2017. The year prior, just to get to the floor of the cap, the bottom end, they had to give Vance McDonald an extension.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yep. Oh, yeah.
Niner
Absolutely.
fans? Okay, they gave Malcolm Smith a ridiculous amount of money.
5 years, $25 million. Yeah, they were just signing guys.
They were throwing money all over. And you have to, because your talent base wasn't good enough. I think
then you had to reset your culture to that matter. Bringing in some veterans who knew how to play the game. Not necessarily great players, but guys who are professional, who know how to practice day in and day out, know how to be a pro. So when you do bring in those young players that you were bringing in, the George Kittles of the world, the Fred Waters of the world, all the young stars the Niners had, Deebo Samuel, they have veterans around to teach them how to travel, teach them how to be a pro, how to take care of their body. That's why you make moves like that. But go ahead, Shasky.
No, it's 100% correct. And I just look at where the Niners are today. Back then, if you gave Jimmy that money, you weren't surrendering multiple All-Pros. Now, you give Brock the money, and unfortunately, you've been so successful and so good at drafting and developing and retaining your own, you are bidding to do to some All-Pros. Like, you just are. You just can't keep everyone. Like, as we're having this IU conversation currently, we're realizing you almost can't keep everyone. If you're a well-run organization, watch the Patriots. They got rid of Richard Seymour. They got rid of Lawyer Malloy and Ty Law and all. Like that's what happens. Your roster is going to have to evolve. And if you're going to roll with Brock Purdy moving forward, the two contracts that I look at that scare the living heck out of me, and if I'm a Niner fan, and I'm not saying Brock is these players, but you just have to acknowledge there is risk here. I would probably give him the money. And I'll give you a reason why. But Russell Wilson, Deshaun Watson.
Yeah.
You look at those contracts, and they were anchoring. And now Denver is going to have a huge hole financially to try to catch up as they're resetting their culture currently.
A lot of dead money.
Huge dead money. And I look at the Deshaun Watson situation in Cleveland, and they've been a dude to really good players. Amari Cooper wants more money right now currently. So, yeah, those big contracts, those will hurt you. And if you look around at the quarterback market, seeing what Trevor Lawrence got, Brock's going to get more guaranteed than Lamar Jackson.
So look at this again. Trevor Lawrence yesterday signs a 5-year, $274 million deal. $200 million guaranteed. $55 million per year. $142 million signing bonus. That's a long cake. So 510-Xfinity mobile text line says, who are you placing Brock with right now? Well, we don't have to worry about that right now.
I don't think any of us said we're getting rid of him.
And look, I had him. You asked me last week. You asked me last week, where do I have Brock ranked? I have him ranked at 6 in the league. But that could change in a heartbeat. At one point, I had Jimmy Garoppolo in the top 10. How did that end up?
Yeah. Russell Wilson 2 years ago. Where did everyone have him? Where do you have him today?
Where do you have him today?
I mean, some people have
Deshaun Watson. We consider one of the best quarterbacks in the league.
Yes.
Nobody would even go out on a limb to say that right now. We don't believe any of the reports coming out of Cleveland that he's throwing with high velocity and he's throwing tight spirals. We have to see it.
Aaron Rodgers. A couple years. I mean, guy was back-to-back MVP. He looks like he can't even move.